Welcome to Practical Tactile, and today we're going to talk about recoil absorbing bipods, and that's what I'm holding in my hand. The recoil of this rifle, chambered in .308, is transferred to the feet of the bipod using this bipod system. That's what we're going to talk about today. When I first got into long-range shooting, it was to shoot groundhogs. I used to go up north quite a lot and shoot groundhogs, and I would use a bipod much like this one from Harris. It connects directly to your sling swivel stud. It's got a replacement sling swivel stud on the bottom, so you can still use a sling. And I use this quite a lot. And I started shooting F-class competition as time went on, and I was using this. And what I noticed was that the short footprint would allow the rifle to cant quite a bit and would cause the bullets to tilt left and right. This kind of system is fine for, shooting one shot, two shots in a groundhog and when you're shooting quickly, but it didn't work very well in competition when you needed to shoot a lot of shots to be competitive. So when you want to shoot a 10 or 15 round string, the wider footprint on the feet was beneficial to reduce the amount of cant. Another example would be a bipod like this one. This is a Versapod. I got the spike that goes right into the forend on this one. And the same thing, it's great for making a quick shot. A bipod like this is good for shooting one shot at a time, but it's not really good for shooting 10 really precise shots, especially at long range. A lot of popular bipods now for F-class with a good wide stance. This is made by Star Shooter up in Quebec. And this one's adjustable for cant. And I added this little feature on here with these little nuts where you extend these little nuts to stop the thing from tilting. What I noticed was that when I clamp it, without these nuts, it could still twist because there's a certain amount of torque with the heavy bullets coming out of a .308, and the rifle would eventually drift to one side. So I put these on here to stop that. So this is a good system if you prefer to shoot a more traditional style bipod, but whatever it is you use, you want to make sure that there's a good way to make sure that this doesn't sneak away on you during your string of fire. Over 10 or 15 rounds, you might be surprised how far the rifle might tilt, and the last thing you want is for that to happen in a competition. It's going to cost you points, right? As time went on, one of the people that I shot with in F-class competition is a gentleman by the name of Jim Thompson, who passed away recently. But he used a bipod like this one, but what he did was he took the foot off and replaced it with a plastic puck, and he had a spike coming out of the bottom, and that gave him a very stable position because when he spiked it into the ground, the bipod didn't move, and that way he could shoot his string of shots without this thing repositioning. It was very, very stable position. That gave him an edge, and he had won quite a bit over the years using that kind of system. And when I saw that, I thought, well, okay, let's see if I can build a better mousetrap. I started working on something to beat that. What I came up with was this: an add-on for the bipod. So I use a nylon strap going to the sling swivel stud and just a spike. Now I could use anything. I made this spike, but originally I was using a tent peg or a piece of rebar, and basically just spike that into the ground, and the recoil energy would be transferred to the spike. That would keep the gun under control while the gun went off, and I got a more stable position. It didn't let the rifle move, so my foot position remained the same. Then the rifle wasn't tilting and canting between shots. And this was a much better way to shoot more accurately, and I came to the point where I could beat Jim Thompson, who was my competitor, my primary competitor in those days. He was very, very good. He had quite a name for himself, and I could beat him on a regular basis using this system. But then they changed the rules of F-class, so I wasn't allowed to use a spike that was more than 2 inches long. This is clearly more than 2 inches long, and he disqualified me in a match because I was using this. So back to the drawing board. I had to come up with something with a shorter spike on the feet that would be legal for F-class competition. So then I went back to the drawing board, and I'll show you what I started coming up with. The rules of F-class, even in FTR, allow you 3 spikes. So I designed a bipod that had 3 spikes, like what you're looking at here. And this one here was, I put quite a bit of effort into it. I machined all this, and I put a lot of, I got captured nuts and everything on here. Anyways, this thing didn't work out very well. What it did under recoil was it popped a wheelie, so the spikes popped out of the ground. So this one wasn't any good. So this one was junk. Never saw service and never used it once in any kind of competition or even practice. It didn't work at all. So when that didn't work, I went back to the drawing board and I produced this bipod. Now this one It's adjustable for cant. You know, it's got a little pivot block in here with a little nut on there. You can lock it wherever you want. And it has a little strap on the back, and the strap went on the accessory rail. So this would have an accessory rail on the forend of the rifle. The rifle had that already, and this is how this one would work. So the energy would be transferred by this strap to this rear, this hook, and the legs would be allowed to pivot forward just a little bit, and the energy would be transferred to these spikes. Now this one here, what I have here, by the way, is some Ranger bands to keep these legs tight, because one of the worst things is play in these legs. If the legs have any play whatsoever, the rifle wouldn't break a really clean shot. So when you're shooting F-class on at this time a 1-minute V-bull, in those days, it wasn't the half-minute V-bull that it is today, I needed that precision. And once I started using this, it was an F-class legal system that kept the feet in the same position throughout the entire string. And this one was great on the 223. Now, the spikes are small, so when I tried this on a larger rifle, it would dig a trench because the spikes are too small, and the ground wouldn't take that kind of that force. It would just dig a trench, and the rifle would dig its way back. So then, for a larger caliber rifle, I had to come up with something that was a little bit better. So I'll show you what I came up with. Now this god-awful mess has surface ground plates in here, and I put surface ground plates because all the spacers, this is just a prototype thing. I just wanted to test the proof of concept, and it's designed to do the same thing. It had a pivot plate here, and use the ropes. It's got larger spikes. I'm attempting to capture more of that recoil for a larger caliber rifle. It's got a wider footprint so that it doesn't tilt as much. It's less sensitive to that. I drilled a bunch of holes to remove weight, and this worked. It was proof of concept, but obviously this is a really hokey kind of a design. It's even adjustable in and out to get the pivot angle of the legs. This can move in and out this way. To try to optimize the direction of the travel of the legs. But this was just to prove out what the geometry might be. So no, I did not use this one very long. I used it for 1 or 2 outings and just verified that it worked, and then I moved on to a better design. At that point, I got involved in the 6x47 Lapua and developed this particular rifle. It's going to pick it a little high and left just a bit. Yeah, that was center impact. Dan Dowling actually did the original blueprinting on this action, and he mounted this Gary Schneider barrel. And this rifle was shot very, very well, 6x47 Lapua. In those days, that was when it just kind of first came out. I was actually going to chamber the rifle in 6XC and shoot the David Tubbs 115 grain D-Tac, but Dan Dowling didn't have the reamer for 6XC, so we decided to go with a 6x47. As time went on, that rifle was very, very accurate, but barrel life was really, really short, and I dropped the project and went back to shooting a 308 and shooting in FTR instead of F-open. And that leads us back to the big dog. This is the one that I'm currently using in F-class competition, and I'll show you some footage of shooting this rifle. So I'm pulling back on the bipod, I'm preloading in a rearward direction, and I'm pulling my shoulder into it just to give it a little extra, so I'm sharing the recoil between my shoulder and the bipod. This one here was made with angle iron feet, extra wide feet. They're still 2 inches long, so this is an F-class legal system. Good wide stance. The legs are designed in such a way that the pivots in here have, you know what, I'll show you. The pivots for the legs are countersunk with these little Teflon O-rings in there, and they just take up the play, make sure that there's no play in the leg pivots, and this is key to the success of this system. So there is no play in these legs whatsoever. They are height adjustable. When you adjust the height, you have to adjust the rope. And where you attach the rope along the forend, I've got a series of holes across the top where I can reposition this screw further back to determine how much stretch I want in the rope. I can move if I put this little screw back here. This comes back, back. Of course, that draws the leg back, and then they have to loosen this off and put the leg where you want it. And one of the cool things about this is that you can adjust the angle that this tracks. The farther back you put, the farther forward you allow the legs to come, the more the rifle will drop under recoil. When you get it in the kind of in the rearward position, kind of slanted back like this, the rifle will actually jump up a little bit. So the trick is to refine that so you get the rifle so it tracks straight back under recoil. I'm going to hold a little higher and lift. Yeah, that was dead center right there. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and thank you for watching Practical Tactile. We'll see you next time.